The red and blue lights rippled across the water's surface as I tightened the last cleat hitch on my boat. The night air was calm, but the sound of boots echoed steadily down the dock. 2 police officers approached, their silhouettes cutting sharply against the glow from the patrol car. The taller one, Officer Bennett, cleared his throat before speaking in that steady, official tone only seasoned cops have. "Excuse me, sir," he said. "We received a call about trespassing and unauthorized docking here at the marina. I didn't even have to guess who had made the call." My eyebrow lifted slightly as I caught a glimpse of platinum blonde hair and crossed arms at the shoreline. There she was, Diane Montgomery, or as everyone around Cypress Bay Estates called her, Karen. She stood there with that smug look of victory. Her chin was tilted, as if she had finally managed to bring me down after weeks of trying. But before I tell you what happened that night, I need to rewind. I need to explain exactly how I ended up with police officers confronting me over a boat I legally owned. 3 months earlier, I bought a waterfront property in the Cypress Bay Estates subdivision. The place was an absolute dream. It had open water views, classic craftsman-style design, and quiet sunsets that looked like they were painted for postcards. But the real treasure wasn't just the house. It was the bonus that came with it. A 51% ownership stake in the Cypress Bay Marina, which sat right beside the property. The marina wasn't just a dock. It was history. Built over 40 years ago by an old-timer named Arthur Callahan. It had survived hurricanes, development booms, and more HOA meetings than any sane man could handle. Arthur was sharp. It kept majority control of the marina, even as the luxury neighborhoods sprang up around it. When he passed away, his estate attorney reached out to me with an offer that, frankly, I couldn't refuse. Now enter Diane Montgomery, the self-appointed queen of Cypress Bay Estates. For 7 long years, she had ruled the HOA like a tiny empire. She enforced every petty regulation with an iron fist wrapped in pastel stationery. She decided who got to park where, what color your shutters could be, and apparently who deserved access to the marina. Diane's power trips were legendary around the neighborhood. She once measured her neighbor's grass with a ruler to issue a citation. She even wrote someone up because their wind chimes were too melodic. Her control issues were almost an art form. My first run-in with her came the very week I moved in. I was still surrounded by boxes when she appeared at my doorstep with a plastic-wrapped welcome basket and a 3-inch binder under her arm. Her smile was tight and sugary. "Welcome to Cypress Bay Estates," she said, her voice oozing with fake politeness. "I took the liberty of highlighting the most important HOA rules for you. Pay special attention to sections 4 through 17. Those cover our watercraft regulations." I thanked her, took the heavy binder, and set it aside. I figured I'd get around to reading it after unpacking. That, apparently, was my first mistake. See, Diane didn't like being ignored. When I skipped the emergency HOA meeting, she called to discuss new resident integration. She took it as a personal insult. But things really blew up the first time I brought my boat down to the marina. It wasn't some flashy yacht, just a modest 24-foot cabin cruiser. She was clean, sturdy, and reliable, my pride and joy. As I backed the trailer down the ramp, Diane materialized out of thin air. She had her clipboard in hand, looking like some sort of bureaucratic phantom. "Excuse me," she barked. "You can't launch that here without HOA approval." I calmly explained that I lived at 47 Marina Cove Way, and that my property included marina rights. Her face twitched, cycling through shades of pink and purple. "That doesn't matter," she snapped. "All watercraft must be approved by the HOA board before entering our marina." That's when I dropped the very first bombshell. With the smallest possible smile, I said, "Actually, Diane, I don't just have marina rights. I own 51% of the marina itself. I bought it along with the Callahan property." For a moment, she froze. The look on her face was absolutely priceless, part disbelief, part fury. But I should have known that was just the beginning of her crusade. Over the next few weeks, Diane went on the offensive. She launched a full-scale campaign that would have made a politician proud. Every day, a new email blasted out to the HOA mailing list. The emails had sensational subject lines like "Unauthorized vessel threatens community standards and property values at risk from negligent boat owner." She organized what she called informal gatherings. These gatherings took place near the dock, where curious neighbors happened to stroll by while I worked on my boat. They'd shake their heads and whisper about declining neighborhood standards. Then came the official complaints to the HOA board, the City Marina Commission, and even the Coast Guard Auxiliary. Every time, I responded calmly, forwarding copies of my ownership documents and the deed. But Diane didn't back down. Instead, she doubled down. She began taking photos of my boat from every possible angle, falsely claiming it violated aesthetic guidelines. She measured the dock distance with a tape measure, insisting I was 3 inches over the allowed line. She even hired what she called an independent marine consultant. It turned out to be her nephew with a fishing license and a bad attitude. The tension finally came to a head during the next monthly HOA meeting. Diane stood at the podium like a prosecutor addressing a jury. She gestured wildly at a PowerPoint titled, "The Boat Problem, a Clear and Present Danger to Our Community." Slide after slide showed my boat from unflattering angles, complete with red arrows and dramatic captions. When she finally wrapped up her exhausting 45-minute presentation, I stood up. I walked calmly to the front and connected my phone to the projector. "I'd like to share something with everyone," I said evenly. The screen switched to show the original Marina deed and incorporation papers. "As you can see," I explained, "the Marina is a separate legal entity from the HOA. The majority owner, me, has full authority over slip assignments, approvals, and operations. The HOA has no jurisdiction here." The room fell into a stunned hush. Then came the whispers. Some of the board members looked deeply uncomfortable, realizing they had been blindly siding with Diane against a legal owner. Diane's face went through every color of a stoplight before settling on bright crimson. "This is impossible," she shrieked. "I've managed this marina for 7 years. You can't just walk in and claim ownership." I shrugged slightly. "I didn't claim anything, Diane. I bought it. The deed is on file with the county. Would you like to see the tax records?" That was the exact moment she snapped. 2 days later, I returned from a peaceful morning cruise to find police lights flashing at the dock. Diane had actually called 911, reporting that I was trespassing on HOA property and illegally mooring a vessel. And that's how I found myself standing there, tightening a cleat hitch while 2 officers approached. Officer Bennett listened carefully as I explained everything, scrolling through the documents on my phone. He leaned closer, studying the screen, while his partner, Officer Hayes, tried not to laugh outright. It was perfectly clear they both knew exactly what was happening here. Diane stood a few feet away. Her arms were crossed tight and her foot was tapping in irritation like she was trying to drill a hole through the wooden dock. After a moment, Officer Bennett turned to her. His voice was calm but incredibly firm. "Ma'am, this gentleman owns the marina. You can't trespass on property you legally own." Diane's mouth fell open before she quickly recovered. Her voice climbed in pitch as she protested. "But the HOA has rules. We have standards. This violates everything we stand for." Officer Hayes took a slow step forward, his expression now completely serious. "Ma'am, calling 911 for a false emergency is a misdemeanor. You've wasted city resources for what looks like a personal disagreement." That finally shut her up. Over the next few days, the neighborhood buzzed like a kicked hornet's nest. Everyone heard about Diane's failed police stunt. Suddenly, people who never dared speak against her started talking. Slip renters from the marina approached me privately, one after another. They shared their own horror stories about her ridiculous power trips. Gary Jenkins from Unit 12 told me she once tried to ban his kayak simply because it was too yellow. Amanda Brooks from Unit 33 said Diane demanded she write a one-page essay explaining why she deserved a boat slip. That was when I decided enough was enough. I called an emergency meeting for all slip holders and any interested residents. When the day came, the community center was overflowing. You could feel the tension in the air, but also the burning curiosity. I stood before them and laid out my plans for the marina, clear and confident. First, I said, we're upgrading the infrastructure. New cleats, better lighting, proper safety equipment. No more neglected docks or faulty ropes. The crowd murmured approvingly. Second, I continued, slip assignments will be fair and transparent. No favoritism, no book club politics. This time, they actually clapped. And third, I said with growing conviction, we're done with the nonsense. No aesthetic committees, no boat beauty contests. If your vessel is seaworthy and you respect your neighbors, you're welcome here. That's when I saw her. Diane was sitting in the back row, her expression a storm of pure disbelief and fury. When I opened the floor for questions, she sprang to her feet, her voice trembling with rage. This is a coup. You're destroying everything that makes Cypress Bay Estate special. Before I could even answer, an older man named Leonard, a longtime resident, slowly stood up. His voice was calm, but it carried the heavy weight of years. Diane, he said, the only thing being destroyed here is your stranglehold on this community. We're tired of living in fear of your violation notices. Applause broke out instantly. Then came the stories, one after another. People brought up the Great Garden Gnome ban of 2019. They talked about the mailbox color war of 2020. They even mentioned the infamous bird feeder prohibition that had driven 3 families to move away. By the time the room finally quieted down, I stepped back to the podium and spoke evenly. Here's what's going to happen. The marina will operate entirely independently from HOA control. And starting today, there is a strict anti-harassment policy. Anyone caught intimidating, photographing, or falsely reporting other marina users will lose access permanently. Diane's lawyer, nervous man named Richard Sullivan, leaned in and whispered frantically to her. She ignored him completely. "You can't do this," she shouted, nearly shaking with anger. "I'll sue. I'll call the state HOA board. I'll bring in the news." Before she could continue her tantrum, HOA Vice President Kevin Mitchell stood up and raised his hand. His tone was measured, but very resolute. "I move," he said firmly, "to hold a vote of no confidence in our current HOA president. This is due to her misuse of authority and actions that have exposed this community to legal liability." You could have heard a pin drop in that room. Then came the votes, one after another. 17 in favor, 2 against, and 1 abstention, which was Diane's sister. When the final count was read, Diane stood completely frozen, her lips trembling. Kevin Mitchell cleared his throat and added, "Furthermore, I move that we formally separate HOA governance from marina operations. This will fully recognize Mr. Reynolds' legal ownership and authority." That second motion passed unanimously. Diane's jaw clenched. She grabbed her designer purse and stormed toward the exit. But just before disappearing through the doorway, she turned around and hissed, "This isn't over. You'll regret this." But it was over. The very next morning, I posted the new marina rules. They were simple, fair, and focused on safety, not vanity. I also installed a brand new sign right at the entrance. It read, "Cypress Bay Marina, privately owned and operated. Slip rentals available to respectful community members." 2 weeks later, I got a new application in the mail. The name on it was Diane Montgomery. She had bought a small sailboat, clearly hoping to somehow claw her way back into the marina's orbit. I read her application carefully, noting her record: false police reports, harassment complaints, and a pending misdemeanor for misuse of emergency services. I stamped the paper with one bold word: denied. I wrote a note beneath it: due to a documented history of harassment and false reporting against marina property. This application cannot be approved. Decision is final. The day she received it, she showed up at the Marina office, her face twisted in pure outrage. Her scream echoed across the water. "You can't do this to me. I built this community. I am Cypress Bay Estates." I looked up from my paperwork, as calm as ever. "Diane," I said, "you're welcome to dock at the public marina 6 miles north. I hear they've got an excellent HOA compliance program." It was the last real conversation we ever had. Her ongoing legal battles quickly drained her finances. The court fees from her failed challenges and the fine from her false 911 call forced her to sell her house. She eventually moved away to a landlocked community in New Mexico. At her final HOA meeting before leaving, she sat completely silent as the new board systematically overturned all her old, petty rules. Meanwhile, I spent that evening at the marina installing one final touch. It was a small, discreet sign at my personal slip that read, "Private Slip, Owner Operated." Under reasonable management, the marina flourished once again. Families came back. Kids laughed and fished off the wooden docks. The sunsets returned to being peaceful again. No violation notices, no tension, no drama. In the end, Diane's 911 call, the one meant to humiliate me, had done the exact opposite. It exposed her corruption to the entire community. The misdemeanor charge stuck. She was hit with $3,000 in fines, 40 hours of community service, and a permanent removal from the HOA board. The local paper even ran a headline, "HOA President's Overreach Leads to Downfall." Her reputation as a local real estate agent was completely ruined. When she saw the final judgment in court, her voice cracked into a devastated whisper. "$3,000 for one phone call," she muttered. Her lawyer, Richard Sullivan, simply nodded and replied, "You're lucky it wasn't worse."